The cover page of One Punch Man Chapter 201, Genjutsu, is a simple one of Saitama punching forward. That man has finally made his grand entrance. His aura was immense as he stood before Flashy Flash and Speed O Sound Sonic. Sonic immediately recognized the monster to be the same one they saw in the basement as children. He can already tell that the Master Ninja is a total beast. But Flashy Flash wasn't nearly as bothered. He mocked their senior for feasting on his students as an introduction, but he had to admit that it was pretty fitting for a guy named Empty Void. It was an absolutely disgusting display. That man was amused to know that Flash knew his proper name. That made it clear to him that the hero had been in contact with Blast. He wondered how his former partner was doing. Then he considered doing the same depraved act on the #1 hero too, followed by a gnarly burp. Flashy Flash immediately rushed towards him. As he let off a flurry of swipes, Empty Void had no trouble leaping out of harm's way. He is clearly very fast. Meanwhile, the skeletal remains of the various Heavenly Ninja party members suddenly went back to just being knocked out. Sonic was visibly shocked by this abrupt shift. While pursuing God's favorite ninja, Flashy Flash explained that Empty Void is a Genjutsu user. It was all just a mental trick. If the guy could really do what they just saw, he would have been able to kill them both just as easily. Sonic processed the information for a little while there. Then he pulled up next to Flashy Flash with a massive smile on his face, acting like he knew the truth all along. He even yelled at Empty Void for trying to trick him with such simple illusions. Flash did not look very convinced, however, and Empty Void evaded them both without any trouble. He was amused by Flash's ability to see through his little bluffs. He admitted to having watched the hero's fighting style, which was exactly what he expected. It was different from the conforming style of the Heavenly Ninja Party, who follow the village's teachings to the letter. These guys would prefer death over defying the teachings of the village. Like Flash said in the last chapter, they were all considered to be failures by that man and God's standards. Just then, Empty Void, true to his namesake, exposed the boundless void of space inside his mouth. From it, he pulled out a cube while looking a bit like overgrown Rover. Now holding it in his hand, he claimed that Flashy Flash had passed. The two shinobi were perplexed by this. Sonic recognized it to be the same type of item that was hidden in the village's basement. But Empty Void decided to make it clear that he has absolutely no interest in Sonic, which really got on the purple ninja's nerves. Flash went for yet another high-speed attack and missed the mark. He didn't want the monster to project his horrible standards onto them. Flashy Flash reflected on how their opponent had stolen the lives of every ninja present. Speaking of which, Galewind and Hellfire Flame were not knocked out, but we don't see any sign of them here. The thought of ending things in such a sentimental place made Flashy Flash happy. He announced that he sent Blast away. He wasn't nearly as naive as the top hero. The ninja hero planned on interrogating that man. That way he'd be able to learn more about God. And he's calling Blast naive because he's hoping to turn that man back into a human. By now, I'm sure Blast and Saitama are pretty bored since they don't have any ninjas to fight. Flashy Flash planned on getting the job done before God could manage to terminate his opponent. According to Blast, Void is the only one with the ability to open the gate of the Celestial Rock Cave, something that directly connects to the dimension God hides in. Flash's plan is a bit short-sighted. They'll need to do more than just get him to talk to win here. The two speedsters clashed all over the filthy battlefield. Sonic was amazed and looked just like something straight out of a shoujo series. Flash was clearly holding back against him because his anger brought things up to a whole new level. It was enough to make Sonic start sweating. The gap between himself and these two has been made abundantly clear. Flashy Flash was managing to do all of this while keeping his eyes closed to avoid falling for Genjutsu tricks. He was especially good at fighting in the dark back when he was still in the village. His other senses were very reliable. Empty Void batted all the attacks away with only a single hand to depend on. Not to mention the fact that he hasn't drawn a single blade yet. This is as personal as a fight gets for Flashy Flash. He is very angry and not holding back, so Empty Void handling him like this is pretty crazy. But I will say that Flashy Flash has yet to use any of his signature moves against Empty Void just yet. That man laughed at Flash's attempt to block out his illusions. The monster decided to test things further. In the next instant, Flash was surrounded by 6 Saitama fists hurtling towards him. Each of them spelled certain death for him. This was a reminder of how his fight against the bald hero ended a few days ago. This is practically what every monster sees before they're turned into mush. The abrupt sense of fear caused his body to convulse and force his eyes open. The ninja leapt back like a fleeing animal. He fell to the ground as if he were in a slasher movie. The Genjutsu overwhelmed all of his senses, not just his vision. Void was happy to say that his manipulation wasn't only visible. The technique uses a psychic wave that targets and personifies fear. So yeah, Flash is really scared of Saitama's power. All of a sudden, things began raining from the sky. Then something fell in Flash's lap. His face darkened beyond recognition at the sight. With wide eyes, Flash held the severed and horizontally bisected head of Sonic as the rest of his body rained down. Taking full advantage of his vulnerability, that man appeared in front of Flash as the cube began to glow. He was amused by the face his junior made. Then, he slammed the cube into the hero's face. The light flared between them. Sonic rushed in to save his old friend, but ended up being hit by the cube too. The two young ninjas were sent away in opposite directions. Sonic is really out of his depth in this one. MT Void thought to himself that Sonic had previously accepted a monster cell. By provoking the boy's inferiority complex, his temptation would rise to the surface, and he would no doubt accept the power. It's interesting that he knew that. This is the first time we have ever had a chance to see a cube be used. It'll be interesting to see just how different the experience may be compared to what characters like Garo and Tatsumaki went through. Elsewhere, a young flashy Flash woke up in a field of grass. He wondered where he was. Then he saw something. It was his friend standing on top of a hill. He called out to a young Sonic, who was happy to see that Flash was finally awake. Sonic was happy they left the village together. After all, they finally made it to the place of their dreams. Flashy Flash processed that for a moment. Then he realized that this place was the one they decided to run away to and form their own village. He was happy. But then, we see that Flash is really talking to God here. Flash considered everything else to be some kind of scary dream. The false Sonic claimed that even a nightmare would be better than living in the village. From this day forward, the two of them would work together to build the perfect ninja village. Sonic turned while extending a hand to Flash. Flash agreed and reached towards God's grasp. And based on what we saw from Garo's transformation into Cosmic Fear mode, as long as Flash touches his hand, he will end up gaining power from God. Flash being so engrossed in this shared dream with Sonic is really fascinating. If that's the case, I wonder why it didn't end up happening if he desires it so much. We don't have any specific reason as to why things didn't go as planned and they ended up being apart. And for many years at that. Sonic also got hit by the cube, so I imagine he is having a similar experience. That'll be interesting. Even if one of them manages to resist God's offer, what are the odds that both of them can? The monster cell didn't manage to turn Sonic, but it's not like he had some sort of natural resistance or anything. He just cooked the damn thing. It was supposed to be eaten raw. Instead of granting him any power, it gave him weight loss diarrhea. If they both manage to resist, then Void won't really have a use for them anymore. This guy is already at a level beyond Sonic's comprehension and hasn't even made an effort to hurt them. Instead of using God's cube, he could have just as easily delivered a fatal blow to a dazed Flash and done the same to Sonic without a second thought. These two are definitely in a tough spot no matter what they do. It is very possible that Blast will intervene here in a moment. We've seen him suddenly appear 3 times with similar context. When Sonic and Saitama first discovered the cube with Monaco, Blast warped in before God could make an offer. Then, when Tatsumaki was offered power by a masquerading god, Blast appeared at her side only seconds later. After that was the Cosmic Garo moment. It's a toss-up as to whether or not Blast makes it to the place where childish dreams are seen in time. Saitama's known for always being late, so he might have that effect on Blast since they're together. Like we said earlier, Galewind and Hellfire were not in this chapter, but they are definitely still present. By now, they should have been able to escape their own poisonous trap. We haven't seen them enter their monster form since their initial defeat, so that might help them out a bit. If they're totally not monsters anymore, maybe they'll be resistant to God's influence. They're different from the other village ninjas, just like Flash and Sonic. They even called the Heavenly Ninja Party a bunch of robots for following MT Void despite the God revelation. They might just help Flash and Sonic here. Whatever the case, I am so happy that we are finally back to receiving longer chapters of One Punch Man, and I know you guys are too. Hopefully this continues to be the case. To be totally honest, we were working on a theory video that predicted a lot of what happened in this chapter, so sadly, Murata beat us to the punch this time around. Side note, although Murata is working on his independent anime studio, he recently made it clear that they are not the studio that will be working on One Punch Man Season 3. Unfortunately. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.